Imagine winter 100 years ago. Not the kind we know today, with weather apps, central heating, and cars that start with a click. This was a different kind of winter. One that didn't just visit it, settled in and ruled. Around the 1920s, winter wasn't an inconvenience. It was an ordeal that shaped every single aspect of American life. Back then, most people lived in small towns or rural areas. Life was physical, demanding, and when the first snows fell, it wasn't about cozy sweaters and hot cocoa. It was about survival. Homes were fundamentally cold. Even in a well-built house, insulation was a distant dream. Single-pane windows offered little protection, and drafts were constant, unwelcome guests. At night, it wasn't uncommon to see frost painting delicate patterns on the inside of the glass. The heart of every home, its literal lifeline, was the stove. Fueled by coal, wood, or oil, it burned almost constantly. The responsibility of keeping that fire alive usually fell to the mother or the eldest child. If the fire went out, the cold seeped back in with terrifying speed. You didn't heat the whole house. That was a luxury beyond imagination. You heated one or two essential rooms, usually the kitchen and maybe a small sitting area. Bedrooms remained frigid. Hallways felt like icy tunnels, and the bathroom, often completely unheated. Getting out of bed on a winter morning was an act of pure courage. You'd dress as fast as you could, your breath forming clouds in the air. Your clothes felt stiff and cold to the touch. Some families would warm their garments near the stove before daring to put them on. And bathing. That was a rare event. Every drop of hot water had to be heated by hand on the stove. It was a laborious process, so baths were infrequent and often shared. For many, a quick wash with a cloth and a basin of lukewarm water, maybe once or twice a week, was all they could manage. Outside, the world belonged to winter. Snow wasn't cleared quickly like it is today, if it was cleared at all. Roads became a treacherous mix of mud, ice, and deep snow, often making travel impossible. In the countryside, a heavy snowfall could isolate a family for weeks on end. Horses, the primary mode of transport for many, struggled through the drifts. The few automobiles that existed were notoriously unreliable in the cold and practically useless on unplowed roads. If you needed supplies, you walked. Men trekked miles to work in factories or mines. Children walked to school, their faces chapped by the bitter wind, pushing through snow that was sometimes waist-high. Snow days were not a thing. School only closed when conditions became genuinely life-threatening. To face this cold, clothing was all about function, not fashion. Layers were essential. Heavy wool coats, thick scarves, and leather boots that inevitably soaked through. Gloves were a precious commodity, mended over and over until they fell apart. Warmth was the only style that mattered. Food was another constant challenge. Without widespread refrigeration, families relied on what they could preserve. Root cellars were stocked with potatoes and carrots. Smokehouses held salted pork. Pantries were filled with jars of canned vegetables and fruits from the summer harvest. Winter meals were simple and repetitive, but they were designed to be filling. Stews, beans, bread, and cabbage were staples. Fresh fruit was a rare treat. An orange was a Christmas luxury. Sugar was expensive, so sweet desserts were few and far between. For the poorest families, the threat of hunger was a constant, gnawing presence. Winter also brought sickness, and it was often deadly. Without modern medicine, illnesses like pneumonia, influenza, and tuberculosis swept through communities with devastating force. A severe winter could claim entire families. Doctors, traveling by horse-drawn sleigh or a sputtering early automobile, often couldn't reach their patients in time. Hospitals were scarce, and the cures we take for granted didn't exist. People understood a grim reality. Winter could kill. And yet, despite all the hardship, life went on. The human spirit is resilient. Children still found joy in the snow. They'd slide on frozen ponds, build elaborate snow forts, and race down hills on homemade sleds. Their gloves would be soaked, their cheeks bright red from the cold, but their laughter echoed in the crisp air. It was a tough childhood, but one filled with unforgettable moments. Work, of course, never stopped. Farmers had to tend to their animals every single day, no matter how low the temperature dropped. Ice had to be chopped from water troughs, fresh water carried from the well, and barns shoveled out by hand. In the cities, factory workers toiled in unheated buildings, their hands numb as they operated cold machinery. You generated your own warmth through constant, grueling movement. As darkness fell early, life turned inward. Electricity was still a novelty, not yet available to everyone. Many homes were lit by the soft, flickering glow of oil lamps, casting long shadows across the rooms. Families would gather close to the warmth of the stove. This was the time for connection. They talked. They told stories. They read aloud from newspapers or the Bible. The radio was just beginning to make its way into homes, and when a family got one, neighbors would often crowd in to listen together, marveling at the voices coming through the static. Entertainment was simple and self-made. A deck of cards, a well-loved board game, or just conversation and the comfort of shared silence. Winter forced a slower pace of life. There was no need to rush because there was nowhere to go. In this environment, community was not just a nice idea, was a survival strategy. Neighbors relied on each other. They checked on the elderly. They shared a few lumps of coal if a neighbor's supply ran low. They helped dig each other out after a blizzard. To be isolated was to be in danger. To be together was to be safe. There was a certain dignity in enduring the winter. People took pride in their ability to get through it without complaint. They didn't expect comfort. They expected hardship, and they met it with a quiet, stubborn strength. When spring finally arrived, with its first hints of green and the smell of thawing earth, it felt truly earned. It was a victory. The winter of a century ago wasn't romantic. It was exhausting, demanding, and sometimes cruel. It could be beautiful, yes, but in a stark and unforgiving way. But more than anything, it forged a generation. It taught them patience, resourcefulness, and a deep sense of gratitude for the simple things. For those who lived it, winter wasn't just a season. It was a test of their endurance, a chapter of their lives they would remember forever. Thank you for watching. If you found this glimpse into the past interesting, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories from history.